about the realities of bullying and cyberbullying. Um, since the company's inception, and that stands for the silent, in 2011, more than 850,000 parents have subscribed to TeenSafe, empowering moms and dads with the ability to securely access their children's mobile interactions via an online account. TeenSafe's monitoring software enables parents to view their children's social media channels, incoming and outgoing and deleted text messages, other messaging apps like Kik or WhatsApp, web browsing history, contacts, call logs, and locations. So there's something really special that we've highlighted on Late Night Parents, because we're always talking about bullying prevention. We talk with so many different organizations here and there. It's something it's always there. It's I tell you folks, before, and I know we have Roz and we have Danny in the queue, but I just want to share this brief story of I put together for some of the youth in the village of Hempstead, that's on Long Island. There was a bullying seminar I did for the youth. And to make a long story short, the fact of the matter is the majority of the children that were in the room and the parents, there were about maybe 50 or so children, they didn't know the difference between bullying and cyberbullying and whether or not they were actually doing the bullying. And those who were in the situation of whether or not I tell my parent or not. So if you have the availability and accessibility to our youth, you got to reach out to them. I'm not saying you have to do an hour or 2 hour seminar, but you got to reach out to the youth of today, because so much is happening right there from their mobile devices, right in front of us. So we think we're the parent because we have our children inside, because the world is a different place than it was 30 years ago when we would be outside playing and dealing with whatever we were dealing with. Now it's on a computer screen. So just take that time out, speak to your youth. It doesn't have to be your son, your daughter, your niece, your nephew, someone that looks up to you as a role model. Very, very important. Take that time out, focus on the youth. So let me just do a quick recap. We had Janet Allison during the first hour, Janet Allison, parent advisor, Andrew Finn. We talked about SAT prep for high school students. Tiffany Capone, the serial entrepreneur. We talked about her clothing line, her battle with lupus. We just had Randi Redmond Oster. She talked about her son that experienced, that came down with Crohn's disease. I know it kind of seems like one of those episodes where it's kind of dark and dreary. Well, we're going to turn it up a notch because we have the best of the best. I'm going to bring them both on. We got Danny Thompson from NBA Full Court Press. We have Rosalyn Ross from Bleacher Report, Yahoo Sports, Lady Sings the Sports. And on the backside, I've been trying to negotiate with this young lady for I don't know how long to come to the Happy Hour Network, so I'll just take it as she's a contributor to Late Night Parents and to the Happy Hour Network. But, Roz, how are you doing?
I'm good, dear. And, yes, you are piling on the pressure. I love it.
Oh, my goodness. Danny, how are you doing, Danny?
I'm doing good. A little under the weather, but I'm doing good. Doing good.
Okay. So usually I usually do most of my discussions one-on-one, but I said these are the two best basketball minds that I know on this coast. So I just want us to have an open and honest conversation about the state of the NBA, the All-Star game coming up this week, the modifications within the All-Star game, and the state, I'll leave it at the state of the NBA as we are right now. Since I'm a gentleman, we are going to let the lovely Rosalyn Ross go first. Roz, I know you're going to want to talk Grizzlies. Yes, they beat my Brooklyn Nets. It's okay.
Yes, they did. So no smack talking for you.
No smack talking. But, Roz, what's your take on the state of the NBA at the halfway mark?
It's fun right now. And, it may be fun for me because my team is, second in the West and third overall. But there are some nice stories going on right now. I mean, you take a look at the number one team in the West, which is the Golden State Warriors, who, were mulling around in futility some years ago, and then even when they started to put things together, you never thought that they could play defense well enough to make a serious run. And here they are, finally with first-year head coach Steve Kerr, who's got them playing defense, combining that with their firepower, and voila, we've got, a team that has fun when they play. I mean, these guys look like they're just playing outside on the playground, just pull up right in front of you and go to the other end. I mean, this is a fun team to watch, and it's cool that they, and it's kind of like the story of my Grizz, years of mulling around and futility, and now, there's a nice little story behind it. And then on the other side, east side, you got these Atlanta Hawks. Again, great story, fun story, a team that, wasn't even getting people to come. People weren't even coming to their games, and then they had the stuff going on in the off season. But now they're number one. They've lost 9 games this season, and they've got everything that you need to make a nice little run for the rest of the year and throughout the playoffs. So, I think it's fun right now. I'll be curious to see if if things can be sustained after the All-Star break. But I like what I'm looking at so far.
Okay. Danny, your take on the state of the NBA.
It's so glad that football season's over. I don't have to worry about watching NFL on Sunday because right now the NBA is probably the most watchable it's been, in my opinion, since before the Big Three got together. We're talking about going back to the days where Dallas had beaten Miami back, I think it was 06-07, how entertaining the NBA is. You have 3 teams, Rosalyn's Grizzlies, you have the Warriors, you have Atlanta. But outside of that, you look at Houston, a team that hasn't had Dwight Howard for more than half the season. Half their guys have been injured, and they've been carried by James Harden. You look at Toronto and Washington before they started sliding as 2 teams in the East other than Atlanta who people weren't talking about when the season started because everybody was on Chicago and Cleveland. You have the Cleveland Cavaliers just destroying teams at this point in time, looking like the Heat were a couple of years ago when they first got together. And then you have teams like the New Orleans Hornets before Davis got hurt for the AC. And the best part about it is if the playoffs started today, 2 of the 5 best players on the same team won't be in the playoffs. We're talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder. So many storylines, and we have, 10, 12 weeks left in the season, and we're just now heating up. So it's so much enjoyable basketball right now.
Danny, since Roz went first last time, I'm going to say give me your studs and your duds so far for the NBA season.
Well, you have to look at the MVP. If you're talking about the top 2 studs in the league right now, I'm not even going to say LeBron James and Kevin Durant. You're looking at Steph Curry of Golden State and James Harden of Houston. Those are the top 2 MVP candidates, along with Anthony Davis in New Orleans. So those 3 are the 3 biggest studs to me right now in the NBA. DeMarcus Cousins is right there. I'm so glad he's in the All-Star game. LeBron puts up good numbers, and the Cavs are playing better. But those 3 guys, Boogie's had a great start. And as far as the duds, I'm a Hornets guy, and the biggest dud so far in the first half has been my LVP, which is the most least valuable player, which is Lance Stevenson. I think Hugo the Hornet has hit more baskets in the first half of the season than Lance Stevenson has. I mean, it's been a train wreck in Charlotte. They finally got it together. Stevenson, at this point, is on the bench while Brian Roberts, of all people, and Jeffrey Taylor are in the starting lineup right now. That's what you do when you spend $32 million on a guy from Indiana last year. He's relegated to being a backup to 2 guys that make 4 times less than what he makes. That's a sad state in the NBA right now, and he's the LVP of the league. But outside of him, Darren Williams is definitely high on my list because of that contract of what he's been through. Yes, he's been injured, but I don't think it gets any worse than Lance Stevenson right now.
Don't get me talking about Ron Williams' ankles and the cortisone shot. Please don't get me started. I'm gonna point this towards Rise. Give me your studs and duds for the season so far.
Well, I can't disagree with Danny, particularly on the studs. And you look at what this is, these all-star selections have meant, and how that's shaken out, and how we're having a debate right now of the folks that were sad that didn't make it, including my Mike Conley, and folks that there wasn't enough room for all-stars this year. So again, it's just more attributing to just how awesome of a year is starting out. I want to say my dud, and it's probably not fair because he is injured, but I'm going with Dwight Howard. And this, the Houston Rockets are number 3 in the West. And, this is a guy that was brought in to get them to championship glory and to get them at the exact spot they're in without him right now. So to me, that's sort of a telltale sign of what his impact, even though he's injured, what kind of impact he has on the team. And maybe it's just because he gets on my nerves sometimes, but ultimately I'm putting him on my dud list, and that's again adding on to the people who already made Danny's list because it was pretty thorough in itself. But I'm adding Dwight Howard for mine.
My next question, I'm going to start for Roz, and I'm going to say Commissioner Ross and Commissioner Thompson. You have one James Dolan write the nastiest email to a concerned fan that's part of a fan base of probably, your top 3 most valued teams when it comes to valuation of teams and profitability in your league. He writes that letter to a fan, and the email then gets out to Deadspin, and we know the rest. What do you do to James Dolan as an owner? I mean, what do you do to James Dolan, who's an owner, but you're the commissioner for the next 24 hours?
Well, I mean, we'd have to have, and I don't know if I was supposed to go first, but, as a person who worked formally in PR and public relations, we definitely have to have a conversation about, this is exactly the type of stuff that we don't want being highlighted as it relates to our relationship with the fans of this league. I mean, ultimately, James Dolan is very irritated because of the position that his team is in this season, and bringing in a guy like Phil Jackson and still weren't able to turn this thing around at all. So there's a high level of frustration there. But at no point can that spill over to the relationship to the fans because, if you anger your fan base, now you're looking at a completely different problem, one that could really, affect your team in the long term, even longer than the trouble you're in with, trying to figure out your starting 5 and whether or not the triangle can work. So we'd have to have a long conversation about, and I'm sure this is stuff he knows, but really the conversation would really be about trying to troubleshoot and figure out what we can do to minimize the damage and to turn any negative perception about the team and the relationship with its fans around. It would have to happen ASAP. I mean, it's a tough situation.
Commissioner Ross, I have a follow-up question to that, and then we're going to hand it over to Danny. So the follow-up question is your team or the team that's the number 2, either, top 3 value team in the league is 10-41. You're still selling out, and you have the nerve to write that email. So I agree with you that it has to be addressed quickly. It's not on the same level as the situation with the Clippers and the gentleman who I refuse to mention his name, Sterling, but it was kind of nasty.
Yeah.
So Commissioner Thompson, what's your take on that?
Well, first and foremost, behind closed doors, I'd call James Dolan and thank him for showing more fight in that email than the Knicks have shown in the last 10 weeks. At least somebody on that floor is actually passionate about the Knicks. No, but on a serious note, you know what, Roz made a great. Roz pretty much said everything I was going to say. There's a certain point. There's certain things you can tell people in the media. There's certain people you can tell fans. Certain people can tell your